Over 50 years ago, while in high school, I worked in a grocery store, Safeway Stores Incorporated. I did things like carry out groceries for customers, stocked shelves, various other chores, swept the floor, scrubbed the floor weekly, and learned how to deal with customers. From directing them to where things were in the store, to helping them get things off the shelves, to bagging their groceries and carrying them out. So I was watching a video about police coming to the aid of someone, a young man who called 911 because he had got high-centered in a mountain community. He was apparently mentally ill, and he told the police when they arrived that he was afraid to come out of their car. So more and more police arrived until there was sort of a crowd there, and all of the police were there to help him because he had high-centered his car. Now, the logical thing to have done would have been to get a tow truck and pull him off the high center. Or with enough people as apparently were there, they probably could have pushed it off. But the police arrived and they said, "Come out of your car." They ordered him out of the car, and that became the big issue. So I was thinking about my job as a teenager, working in a grocery store, and occasionally a customer would come up and they would move a can of, say, Cooner beans or Safeway beans from the shelf, and then look at it and look at the price and put it back. We were taught, when we were taught to stock the shelves, to face all of the cans outward so people could see the label and see what was on the label. And let's assume the woman put it back in a sloppy manner and the label wasn't showing, just the fine print on the back with the ingredients. You couldn't tell whether it was beans, peas, corn, or what from the label, because the back was facing you. So let's assume I went up to the customer and said, "Face the label outward, please." And she looked at me questioningly and said, "What? I'm not going to buy that." And I say, "I know you're not going to buy that, but put the label so it faces out so other people can see it." "Well, I don't want to lift my arm there. I've got a rotator cuff problem and I don't want to lift my arm up to do that," she responds. So now the issue isn't whether or not she's going to get the can of beans, whether she wants a can of beans, whether she wants beans or corn or pears even. It's the label is facing, and my job is to make sure that the labels are all facing out. So I tell her, "Lady, face the label out." Now my main purpose is to help shoppers get their groceries. That's the only purpose that I'm there. That's what Safeway hires me for. They want to sell their cans of corn or beans or whatever to customers, and my job is to assist in that sale. However, I perceive my job as very conscientiously as making sure all the labels are outwardly faced so that people can see what the hell's in the can. So I tell the lady, "If you don't turn the can around so the label faces out, I will have to tase you." She looks at me and says, "I'm not going to do it." So I pull out a taser and I tase her. And she screams and yells and goes down on the floor. I release the taser trigger and I say, "Now are you going to put it up?" And she says, "I don't want to." I tase her again and she says, "I don't want to." And on the floor near her, that just happened to come off one of the racks was a beer can opener with a jagged point. And she picks up the beer can opener and looks at me and swings toward me. And I take out my pistol and I shoot her because I feared for bodily injury from the beer can opener. Now, how did we get to where I kill a customer who won't face a jar or a can of corn or beans or whatever outward, to the point that she's dead because she wouldn't comply with my order to face the can out? My job was to make sure all of the cans were faced out. That's what they said that was part of my training. I'm following my training. I'm doing what they trained me to do, tell customers to face the labels out when they replace items, and or to do it myself. I make it a show that I am the one in charge and I want the label out, and therefore the lady should do it. Now, how long do you think Safeway would keep me as an employee under those circumstances? Now, let's look at the police. They were called to assist. A guy said he was stranded. He couldn't get back. They come to his car. He tells them he's afraid to get out of the car. It's dark. He's a little bit mentally ill, but he's afraid to get out. Their job is to assist the motorist, not to kill him. How did we get from assisting a motorist to a battle of compliance of wills to the point where some poor kid, scared to get out of his car, dies? We should look at that. We should reconstruct that. And we should wonder, where the hell are we getting these morons that enforce the law? And more so, what kind of morons are keeping these people employed? And what kind of moron judges or administrators are allowing fear for injury or fear for your life as an excuse for murder? Now, the video showed that the kid in the car had a little bit of a knife, but they broke his window out illegally. He was in the car, sitting on the seat. He turned around with the knife in his hand, and he was shot and killed for having the knife in his hand. When any moron would know to step away if the knife was a threat. He's in the car, he has to open the door, he has to get out of the car, he has to attack the cop. The cop is standing outside, can easily take a step back, and doesn't take a step back, but puts a bullet forward. Now, I submit there's something wrong with the system that does that. Now, what is wrong with the system that does that? They misconstrue. The training is to get control. Why should you get control when you're trying to help somebody? They ought to look at why they're there the first time. They ought to be like, it should be like a pilot landing a plane. You have a checklist. The first thing you look for is, why am I here? Am I here to make an arrest? Am I here to look for something unlawful? Am I here because there's a danger? Am I here to protect the community? Am I here to protect myself? Or am I here to help this poor bastard get off the mound of dirt that he ended up on with his car? What is the prime reason I'm here? The prime reason you're there isn't to exert authority. If your prime reason for being there is to exert authority, then you are trained to be an officer in a police state. We are making culturally a police state. We have a police state. We need to recognize this. Instead of talking about defunding the police, let's get them to get their goals straight. You should, when you go to a scene, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Am I here because a crime was committed? Or am I here to assist a citizen? Can I assist the citizen by killing him? Well, if I can't assist the citizen by killing him, then how do I assist the citizen? Now, I would say one thing that was really interesting is when I taught college and graduate students, my wife was teaching fifth grade. And I read some of the essays that her fifth graders had written, and they were much more erudite, were tighter, more logical than what some of my graduate students had written. And I'm wondering what the hell has happened between grade 5 in the public school system and say grade 18 in a school system. Have they forgotten everything? Has it been trained out of them? Or is it drugs? Is it pursuit of sex? Or does something happen to the brain where it gets mushy? I submit not. I think what happens is we've got a society of fear. We train these people that the public is the enemy. You should be fearful of the public. That you're not part of the public. And things then become symbolic. And in a police state, there are symbols. One of the symbols was the knife. When the cop says, put down the knife, and the guy threatens or offers to throw it out the window. No, that's not what he was told. He was told to put it down. That happened on the video. He said he'd throw it out the window. The knife was symbolic of authority. And when the guy, after his window had been broken to get him out, ostensibly to help him, and he turned in his seat with the knife, and the officer said that was a threatening gesture. How did it threaten him? It didn't threaten the cops. It threatened his authority. The knife was symbolic. And the command to put down the knife was symbolic of the authority. And the man, even though he may have been mentally ill or even crazy, defied that symbol, and the symbolic interaction caused him to die. Now, we should look at that. We should look at the training. We should look at things like the Stanford study, where you give somebody indicia of authority and it goes to their head. Why is the police job much different than the grocery clerk telling a customer to face the can outward? I submit it isn't. And I submit that we ought to go on the right track instead of the wrong track. The problem isn't with the police. The problem isn't with the training. The problem is with our society. And what we expect of our policemen, what they're trained to expect from the people they're policing. We're no longer presumed innocent. We're presumed to be a threat. And when an officer approaches, he is de facto threatened by that person because that's his training. He doesn't come and put his arm around the guy and say, hey buddy, how can I help you? Now, I'm harping on this over a number of years. One of the reasons is that when I trained as a barber, we trained down on what they called Skid Row, Larimer Street in Boulder. It was populated by what were then known as winos. They were alcoholics, drug addicts, etc. They were violent sometimes. They were drunk. I saw a few stabbings there and things like that. These people came into the shop and were customers. We treated them like customers. We didn't treat them like a dangerous threat. We got to work with them. And in fact, some barbers in the southern United States are being trained as first responders because they get used to acting with people like that. So why do we train police to exert authority, that they have to take command, that they have to take control of every situation and not look logically at the situation? Why is that the training? Why are we training a bunch of paranoids out there? Why aren't we looking at this? Why are we letting it go? Why are we letting prosecutors excuse this behavior? Why are prosecutors justifying this behavior When I went to law school, I was taught I should be a teacher. I should teach my clients certain things. I should help my clients do certain things. I never dreamt I would teach clients to kill. Why would a prosecutor teach their clients to kill? They're supposed to represent the people of the state of Colorado, not the police of the state of Colorado. I think it goes from the top down. Power in our society now, instead of from the bottom up, as in a democracy, is Napoleonic, and power from the top down. So if we're going to have a Napoleonic system, then we got to look at who's in power and make sure those in power know what they're doing and just don't exercise power for the hell of it in an arbitrary and capricious manner. Well, so much for my rant today. Follow the dinosaurs roar if you can, and please send me comments. It's discouraging enough trying to make up these commentaries without getting any feedback. So you people have a good weekend, and talk to you later. Bye.